16 to 20, and it's underway. 50 kilometers, 31 miles, with some spectacular scenery in the background. The city of New York City. 305 runners will be competing here in this, the first ever Eikeden ever to be competed outside the nation of Japan. 61 five-man teams. The United States national team, 8 foreign national teams, a team from each of the 50 states, one from the host city of New York and one from the District of Columbia.
We got a quick glimpse there, Jim, of Steve Scott right up in the lead group. I would suspect that Scott and Marcus O'Sullivan, who is running for Ireland, there you see him on the left of the screen, to the left of the car, wearing a basically white color, will not take the lead and forge things, I don't think, until the latter stages of the 5K. For both of them, that's not an event, the 5K, that they're totally familiar with, despite Scott's great success here in his early ventures at the distance. But they're running right now, heading down towards the Wall Street area, and they'll cut over onto FDR Drive.
It all started at 46th Street and 1st Avenue in front of the United Nations, and the route will turn east on 53rd Street in just a little while. And again, this first leg, 5 kilometers. Now, as far as the runners are concerned, they're starting at 46 degrees, things to be careful of.
Really, I think, believe it or not, right here, the footing is fine. Some sections of New York, the road undulates more than most. It is a well-used city, as we all know. I think right now, and let me add this, in relay races, one thing that's important to note, you sometimes get caught up in the fervor of being on a team with other people. People run faster than they would normally on a 5,000-meter race that you are running for your own glory. And when you have teams, I think, is potentially bunched as Ireland, Great Britain, and the United States, anybody can win. And they're also running for some serious prize money here, which we'll touch on later. I think most people are going to go out at a pretty even pace, Jim. I don't look for the legs on this race to be very tactical, as they might be if this was simply a major road race where you're running for yourself.
You saw the right-hand turn on East 53rd Street. This part of 53rd Street is a natural valley that separates Beekman Place on the south side from Sutton Place on the north. And there are 2 bluffs that actually overlook the East River. Some of Manhattan's most luxurious townhouses, most of them built back in the 1920s, are located in that 11-block strip. And now, the course turning south on the Franklin Delano Roosevelt Drive, also called the East River Drive here in Manhattan. And a quarter of a mile to the north, the Queensboro Bridge, completed back in 1909.
Those apartments that you're just reviewing there probably cost more per square inch than anything you've ever seen any other place here. This is one expensive town. They are now heading out on the FDR Drive. We were seeing the early leader is, now let's talk about the Russian team. And frankly, it's hard to. I called the rooms of all of the Russian runners yesterday, and probably over a 5-hour period of time made 8 phone calls and never found any one of the Russians in the room. Found one phone off the hook and was unable to get much background information on them. Called the Russian embassy in New York and got a busy signal for 3 hours. I don't know what's going on, folks, but it's interesting to know that Glasnost is really here. These guys are competing for real money in Russia.
Over $200,000 in prize money. You look at the East River from the helicopter and the field starting to stretch out. The FDR Drive, the East River Drive, if you will, linking Queens with Manhattan, 5 boroughs of New York. I just want to get back to the weather for just a second, Larry. The runners going at the 5K 46 degrees. Will it affect them at all? Is that an advantage or a disadvantage, the temperature, as they go into the first tunnel?
Right. They're actually on the FDR Drive, if you're not familiar with New York. Just off to their left is the water of the East River. And one thing, the weather here, 46, is an ideal temperature. It is not too humid. The runners will have to contend the wind on the backstretch.
So we're on the first leg, 5 kilometers, a total of 50. It's 31 miles around the island of Manhattan. We'll take time out and be right back. The Eikeden live picture, the 1988 America's Eikeden. And in first place, the early leaders. Again, this is 5 kilometers. The Soviet Union, followed by Ireland, who Larry Rawson felt would be very strong, along with Great Britain, also another very strong team. The first leg, 5 kilometers, followed by an 8-kilometer leg, a 12-kilometer leg, a 15-kilometer leg to the finish.
There you see some of the state teams hanging right up there with the Soviet Union. That's Mikhail Dasko from Leningrad forging the early pace. Right behind him is Great Britain. That's Deon McNeilly, who is a technician in the Royal Air Force, number 3-1. Scott is wearing the all blue of the United States. Up on the balls of his feet, looking strong with a lot of newfound confidence Scott has. There you see him. He did not have a good indoor track season at the mile distance. And just this thing, he said, was a great confidence builder. The race he ran in Carlsbad just a week or two ago. You're looking at is the Carlsbad race from 1987, and Scott was pouring it on as Gidima Shahanga from Tanzania trailed him down the home stretch. Scott lives nearby in Fallbrook, California, and he, as you can see, they're passing the 3-mile mark. There's 176 yards to let it go out. And when you're a top world-class distance runner, as the runners behind them have run marathons, it's hard to catch a miler who can run 1:45 for 800 meters. We had a chance to speak with Steve Scott and get his thoughts as he entered this race. There's Scott right there, running comfortably. There's Deon McNeilly, who is a technician in the Royal Air Force and has really just burst into prominence in Great Britain just this year. He is a 13:40 5,000-meter runner. There you see, passing wearing the green of Ireland, back in the pack, about in 7th place right now, and it's early in the first mile. The athletes are at about the 1.5-mile mark. That was Marcus O'Sullivan. Jim, I'd best describe this pace as comfortable. I don't think anybody here is running a 4:15 or 4:20 first opening mile. It looks very comfortable. Scott looks comfortable to me, and so doesn't the Russian. I don't think the Russians will be major factors in this. Looking at their best times for 5 and 10,000 meters and not being able to talk to the teams, I tried to speak with each of the coaches and many of the athletes to get a feel of where their heads were here. I don't think these guys are going to be able to run halfway through the race with the teams and the likes of Great Britain, Steve Jones, and a host of the talent that's here. Roger Hackney also will be running the second leg and is a very good runner for Great Britain.
There you see again the skyline of Manhattan. It's the Soviet. The 27-year-old native of Leningrad, Mikhail Dasko, continues to lead, approaching East 3rd Street. There is the first relay point where they will pass the Tasuki, which is actually a sash. They don't use batons in the Eikeden. They use the Tasuki.
And I think that's actually a plus. There's probably something psychological to gripping during the frustrating periods here and the tension that you have out on the race course, holding on to something, but it certainly is a little easier and more comfortable to just throw that sash around your shoulder. There you see O'Sullivan. As you look on your screen, he's wearing green, running right beside Scott. And I would look for a break by one of those guys with great speed who have run great miles this year, or great other 5,000 meters in Steve Scott's case, probably within the last mile. And we're past the 2-mile mark now. I think it could happen anytime in the next maybe 2 or 3 minutes. You might see Scott or someone break from the pack here and try and open up a lead in the rest of the field. Notice all of the other top teams, the state teams hanging in there very, very well on the opening leg.
Those numbers that you see on the jerseys, by the way, 5-1, 8-1, 7-1, not morning line odds. There's no parimutuel wagering, all right? Each team has been assigned a team number. Japan number 1, Canada number 2, England number 3, and so on. And the dash after the hyphen means that these are the runners for the first leg.
We will try and point him out to you. He's running. If you look at the left and you look at the first runner in the group there's Dasko that I mentioned from Leningrad, from the Soviet Union. Directly behind him in blue is Ray Wixell from Arizona. And behind Wixell on the left is Vince Draddy running for California. So we're seeing some of the top teams hanging tough right up there at the state division and running very, very well.
Again, there are really two different types of competition going on right now. The international competition and the state competition. All of the states have been assigned colors as well as numbers. And all 50 states are represented. New York City has a representative team, as well as the District of Columbia.
Jim, if our viewers up there see a number 9 or lower to the left-hand part of the bib, the big letters up there, that is an international team or America's top team. And America is wearing 8 throughout the race. I'm sorry, the Russians are wearing number 8. The United States is wearing number 9. There's Marcus O'Sullivan wearing 5. All the other numbers, the higher numbers in orange, are the state teams that you're looking at. Colorado is expected to run well. I see Pennsylvania being led by Jim Norris. He's running their opening leg, number 49. Hanging tough. Look how many good state runners are hanging up here with the international stars.
They're still on the FDR Drive, which links the boroughs of Queens and Manhattan. Welfare Island coming into view, known for its infamous prison. Fierce riptides in the East River surrounding that island actually acted as the prison walls because nobody could survive the 700-foot swim to the mainland, kind of the Alcatraz of the East.
I like it. I was going to say that myself. You stole my line, Kelly. There you see Wixell, that powerful man with a well-tanned look right now, running for Arizona. He's a very, very good miler running the 5,000-meter leg. I've said it many times, Jim, but if you young runners out there would consider this, if you consider yourself a miler, probably your best distance to run is the steeplechase or the 5,000 meters. Take your basic speed, train a little more on the distance end of your training, and you'll probably be a great 5,000-meter runner, as Steve Scott is now finding himself to really be. He is the American indoor mile record holder right now, Scott in the blue of the USA, and he also has the 4th fastest time outdoors ever run for the mile, and he converts that speed and runs a great 5,000 meters, which is 3.1 miles. Scott's run 3:47 for the mile. The man behind him, Marcus O'Sullivan, and by the way, they're picking things up now. There is Dasko, there you see right now, and he is, as I mentioned, from Leningrad. He is a 13:35 5,000-meter runner. He did that in 85, and he actually improved his time down just below 13:30 in 86.
Now you can see just over Dasko's right shoulder the runner from California. All right, 15, the number for California, 1 meaning again the first leg. That is Vince Draddy, 26 years old, out of San Diego. So as you look at Draddy, is he any kind of a rabbit right now, trying to press the pace and push the Soviet beyond what he ordinarily might try?
Not at all. Very fine runner at the University of Virginia. Look at Draddy go. This is impressive now. Draddy has run sub 4 minutes for the mile. He has run about 3:56, and the break is being made now. Look at Scott begin to power away. The runners are about 50 or 45 seconds. Look at Scott fly. Look at those cars go by. Any muggers in the streets right now don't have a chance. Look at Scott move, Draddy, and they're all out right now down the drive. The wind has been at their back most of this way. The wind is blustering at 16 miles an hour coming from the northwest. They are heading south. One of the biggest milers to ever run sub 4-minute mile at weighing 165 pounds. When you consider that most top milers are about 145 or 50, that's a lot of weight to carry. Here they come in for the first exchange, Jim.
So the 5Ks has been completed, a great first run, and the Tasuki, the sash, has been passed in the United States on the front end. Steve Scott did his job. This, the second leg, 8 kilometers, 5 miles even.
California is in second place ahead of all of the other international countries, and we have Arizona in third. The American team is out there right now in the lead. John Gregorek running for the international team. Unofficially, 13 minutes and 44 seconds. He covered 5,000 meters on the road. Steve Scott seems to be running well as he heads towards trying to compete at 1,500 meters in the Olympic Games for the United States.
All right, the second leg, 8 kilometers. Here's the course description. As they continue the East River Drive, it becomes South Street. They'll pass under 3 bridges that link the Lower East Side to Brooklyn. It starts with the Williamsburg Bridge. West is Little Italy, and then around South Street, and finally all the way down to City Hall. So 8 kilometers, 5 miles. As we're on the second leg, the United States was on the front end, and it is John Gregorek, the 27-year-old out of Barrington, Rhode Island, after a good first 5 kilometers by Steve Scott out of Fallbrook, California. We'll be back, live coverage, the 88 Eikeden on ESPN. And good morning from Midtown Manhattan. The ASICS Cup, America's Eikeden, 50 kilometers around the island of Manhattan, 31 miles. And we're in the second leg, where the Soviet Union continues to lead the international race. Yevgeniy Zherebin, the 23-year-old Soviet, is currently out in front in the international division, and the American 25-year-old Jim Klein out of Scottsdale leading the team competition. John Gregorek, running the second leg internationally for the United States, has fallen back in the pack. Again, a strong headwind on this, the second leg, 8 kilometers, and they are under the tunnel. They have begun to come around Lower Manhattan. We talk about the strong headwind. All of a sudden, Larry, you enter the tunnel, there's no wind at all.
That's probably a welcome relief, Jim. You psychologically feel like you're going a little faster. It's comfortable. It gives you a chance to kind of regroup and face that wind again. The wind also makes the race tactical. You'll find people with more speed than maybe the guy up front. Klein does not have the sprint speed that Gregorek or O'Mara have. You'll notice the two guys that I think have the best potential kicks, the green of O'Mara from Ireland and Gregorek, who's last in this group, are sitting back letting the other guys who lack the speed force the pace. They will probably pull out at some point in time and try and blast by these guys.
Gregorek, wearing the blue for the United States, has now fallen back into the 5th spot.
Makes no difference because he's right up with the lead pack. It's no problem at all.
So that is the Soviet Yevgeniy Zherebin out of the Soviet Union, 23 years of age. As he forges ahead, John Gregorek is currently running 5th for the United States. This, the 8 kilometers second leg. Let's meet John.
At 27 years of age, he's in the prime of his distance running life. Gregorek is a 1980 and 84 U.S. Olympian at the steeplechase distance and intends on trying for his 3rd U.S. Olympic team at 5,000 meters. After this year, he says he intends to concentrate on road racing. First of all, it's more lucrative. Secondly, he's had a very fine career. Probably only 1 or 2 other Americans have been able to be as successful on the roads and on the track at the same time. His fastest time for the steeplechase, 8 minutes, 18 seconds. The distance very similar to running 2 miles all out.
I think it's fantastic. I'm really excited to be able to run with these guys that are on my team that I've always just raced against, and I think it's the first time I'll be rooting for them, and it's just going to be fun having the guys of that much talent, either handing you the sash or you handing them the sash and just waiting to see what happens. I'm excited.
The runners have moved through the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel underpass, the race turning north along West Street. Back in 1811, the bank along the Hudson River was filled in to build docks, which created West Street. By the turn of the century, West Street had actually replaced South Street as the main commercial gateway and was more valuable as far as waterfront property was concerned. There, the famous skyline of Manhattan.
Gregorek has finished approximately 3.5 to 4 miles of his leg of the race, and he has about a mile left to go. You notice him moving in a position to start to pick up the pace here and force things. The Soviet Union's Zherebin trying to go with him. Notice the order has changed now. They've moved from back there where they were resting in effect and letting the state runners try and break the wind. Klein is falling back a bit. Junkermann, who had a very fine indoor season, is a very good steeplechaser, is holding on well, and the pace now is accelerating as Gregorek is starting his long build towards the handoff here after completing 5 miles of this race.
And of course the sashes that they're wearing, called the Tsuki, the Eikeden, worldwide. You know, the Japanese, of course, are watching. It's about 8:30 at night back in Tokyo and in all of Japan. And you talk about the Eikidens. There are over 500 Eikidens held every year in Japan at every level of skill. They attract media and television coverage in their native Japan equal to that of football and baseball coverage here in the United States.
Jim, I was amazed at this. I chatted with people from Japan who were involved in television advertising, and they have 10 of them that are nationally televised, and the one that draws the greatest amount of attention on television has a 35% market share of all televisions in the country. So more than 1 out of 3 are turned on to watch one of the Eikidens.
Well, the Japanese people, Larry, watch the Eikidens as part of their New Year's celebration, much the way Americans gather to watch the barrage of college football bowl games.
The longest Eikeden that they have, Jim, is 500 kilometers. It's a 300-mile race.
300 miles.
Absolutely.
Again, it was 46 degrees as you look at the skyline of Manhattan and one of the 5 bridges.
There you see Gregorek powering along. America chose its top 5 runners. It was, frankly, a fairly controversial thing inside the sport, as many people wanted to be on the national team. And they selected people who had pretty much run their best or American record holders at their respective distances that are being raced in this Eikeden. And Gregorek has amongst the fastest times ever for 5 miles and also for 10 kilometers, which is 6.2 miles.
Yeah, Again, transmission from helicopters and from live vehicles will occasionally break up. There's a world feed going obviously all around the world. Our international competition, runners from Japan, from Canada, from England, from France and Ireland, Italy, Korea, the Soviet Union, and of course the United States, where John Gregorek now has taken over the top spot. And the international leaders, the standings through 11 kilometers. Ireland, it's Frank O'Mara running the second leg out of Limerick, Ireland, no less. And the Soviet Union, Yevgeniy Zherebin, still running right on the heels of John Gregorek.
Gregorek is a runner who can kick well and almost with the very best people that you may run across in distance running. But more often than not, he tends to build over a longer period of time. Like he might have in a race like this a strong half-mile finish where a guy like O'Mara, who is trailing him, has blazing sprint speed and is happy to try and contest the finish line to get there first over only the last 300 yards. So it is in Gregorek's best interest to try and make a long, sustained kick to pull away. There is also prize money here for the fastest of each of the legs that the runners will be competing for. There's the finish line they'll be shooting for, and the prize money here totals $200,300 that everybody's contesting for. I think it's great that the Russians are going to get a chance to participate in some money for running.
That finish line, by the way, at the Tavern on the Green in New York Central Park, the same finish line for the New York City Marathon. They'll run around 840 acres of famous real estate in Manhattan, otherwise known as Central Park.
John Gregorek, 27 years of age, resting pulse 38.
And of course, part, Larry, of this second leg will be run around some of the tallest skyscrapers, the shadows of the World Trade Center, the Twin Towers, the highest skyscrapers in Manhattan, the huge canyons of New York City.
Jim, that side, the area they're on right now, coming up the west side, is scheduled for a lot of renovation. Things like that ported terminal building that you see at the top over Gregorek's head. All that's very valuable real estate that's getting changed. As you look at Johnny Poley, who won the 1986 New York Marathon right there, with the little earring dangling in his ear there. Poley has run 2:13 for the marathon this year, hopes to make the Italian Olympic team at that distance. He is down to run the third leg.
Quite a festive mood throughout the island of Manhattan, of course. The area they're approaching now, the area known as Chelsea. Some great restaurants and taverns down in that part of the west side.
Look at Gregorek let the gas pedal down here. He is just hammering away, and he's opening up the big gap here. Now watch and see. Here comes O'Mara trying to make some headway here as they come in towards the exchange zone. Junkermann in fourth place. California is leading in the team title race. Notice Arizona's fallen back dramatically. The pace picked up very, very quickly here over the last mile. Look at the difference in the leg speed that you see with Gregorek and in the middle of that 5-mile leg that they were running. The Russians holding on very well. Irish are doing very, very well here. I'm surprised O'Mara is not out kicking Zherebin.
And here comes the exchange, the Tashuki, the Sash. And for the United States, it's Pat Porter out of Colorado. Gregorek is done a successful 8 kilometers. They start the 12-kilometer run now, and Pat Porter's out there for the United States. The state competition out of California. Running on this third leg, Bob Anex out of Menlo Park. He's 29 years of age. So the third leg, 12 kilometers.
There's Jim Klein looking. Oh, no. What is going on here? Oh, here goes. That's Art Menchaca from Arizona.
All right, 7.4 miles, 12 kilometers, the third leg. Again, it's up the west side of Manhattan, the West Side Highway, the Hudson River on their left, New York on their right, New Jersey across the river to the left, and they will finally make a right-hand turn up on the upper west-hand side. The area they have just come through, West Street, where the Washington Market vendors used to sell their goods between 4 and 10 o'clock every morning. They cross Spring Street, of course, skirting the western border of very famous Greenwich Village. Of course, a lot of movies have made there. A lot of coffee shops back in the areas of beatniks.
That's the Italian team, Jim, passing off to Johnny Poley. And they're about in 5th place. There you see another one of the state teams passing off Colorado, hanging tough up here, running right up with the best of the international teams.
Larry, the passing of the Teshuki, not as easy as a baton. A little trouble with the wind. It's not as smooth, and certainly the Americans have never done it before. I don't know if they practiced it at all, but in the wind you saw a couple of mix-ups and some valuable time was lost.
That's true. You know, maybe it actually causes them a second or two in the whole race. It might be more comfortable when it's on you. I did see Steve Scott, though, pull the thing and try and adjust it. A couple times it kept sliding off his face. That's probably a good way Porter has it carried on him. It's right underneath his armpit. It's over the side of his shoulder. He's got the bulk of it behind him.
So as the runners are now on the third leg, the international standings, the United States first, Ireland is second, the Soviet Union is third. The third leg, 13 kilometers, the ASICS Cup. Welcome back to Manhattan. This then the third leg of the Eikeden, 12 kilometers, 7.4 miles along the West Side Highway, up into the Henry Hudson Parkway, turning right and coming back down Broadway, passing Columbia and its famous law school, and heading on in to Central Park. On the third leg for Uncle Sam, Pat Porter, 28, out of Alamosa, Colorado. He's been running on this third leg, Larry Rawson, into a very strong headwind.
He has been averaging around 5 minutes a mile. The headwind, Jim, is up to 20 to 25 miles an hour. And he is closing in on the handoff area. He is 6 times over our national cross-country champion and a very, very strong road racer as well.
On the front end for Uncle Sam on this, the third leg, off comes the sash, the Tsuki. There's no baton. This an ancient Japanese tradition. On the receiving end, Mark Curp, 29, out of Lee's Summit, Missouri. He'll take the Tsuki and off he goes on this, the fourth leg. It's 15 kilometers.
His lead at the start was 15 seconds. It's now 35 seconds.
After the exchange to the 15K runners at 113th Street, we just showed you that. The course will turn east onto 110th Street and south on 5th Avenue through Harlem. This section became known as Spanish Harlem when thousands of Puerto Ricans and Latin Americans came to the neighborhood after World War I. The course entering Central Park at 102nd Street, where the remainder of the race will be contested, and contested very strongly for the Irish. John Treacy, 32, out of Waterford, Ireland, about to take command of this race.
For the first 4.5 miles of this section, Treacy averaged 4 minutes and 37 seconds, and he kept gaining on Curp and drew astride of him 4 miles into this 9.3 mile leg. When he reached him, he didn't rest at all. He kept forging on this very hard pace and pulled away from one of America's top road racers, Mark Curp.
This the fourth leg, 15 kilometers to be run, and John Treacy from 30 seconds behind, forging ahead out of Lee's Summit, Mark Curp.
Treacy in very hard training now to try and actually win a gold medal at the 1988 Olympic Games at the marathon distance. He took the silver medal in Los Angeles at that race.
A frustrating feeling for Mark to have been 30 seconds in front, and now looking at the afterguard as John Treacy forges ahead. So early in this fourth leg, it looks as if the Irish are on their way to a big lead. The unemployed built sheds on this site. Their makeshift communities were called Hoovervilles, and you're looking at the Irish native right there, John Treacy, just stretching things out. He was almost a half a minute behind at the last exchange. He will pass the Tsuki on to John Doherty with almost a half a minute advantage for the final 10 kilometers. We've had Steve Scott alongside, John Gregorek. Steve Scott, of course, ran early in the morning. It was 46 degrees, brisk, cold as he ran along the East River. How about the flexibility, Larry Rawson, of the human body to withstand the effort that we're seeing here?
It's amazing, Jim. It really is. The pulse rate, which is normal for an adult when you train hard, and the body likes hard training. It responds well. It goes from 70, 75 beats a minute at normal. These athletes are so well trained, their pulse rate is down around 40. But it has the ability to rise up close to 180 and even 200 beats per minute. So they can push their pulse rate up 5 times over normal. And the body temperature during a race goes up to 102 to 104 degrees. 15 minutes after the race is over, the pulse rate is almost back to normal.
John Treacy in Ireland leading the international division. Mark Curp running in the second spot for Uncle Sam. And the Soviet Union is currently in the third spot. It is Mikhail Khramov. And as far as the state leaders, as 29 kilometers have been completed, California is currently in the first spot. The Lakeside native, Terry Cotton, 33 years of age, running the fourth leg of 15 kilometers. And it was Arizona, Don Janicki, 28 out of Tucson, running on that fourth leg. Again, international competition. 9 international teams are here. All 50 states are represented, including New York City and the District of Columbia as well.
Jim, in the state competition, Dave Barney will be running the anchor for Arizona, a good 10,000-meter runner, and Mark Conover, who went to Humboldt State and is now living in San Luis Obispo, is a very seasoned 27-year-old runner. And I think those guys will probably hold their positions. I'll be very surprised if somebody can overtake both of them and win. California, Arizona doing very well, representing their states here today.
Central Park on the right, Central Park West, some expensive real estate bordering Central Park, and the west side of Manhattan. About 2 minutes now until the exchange. Treacy, very comfortable, very leisurely out there.
You know, one thing about him, I'm not surprised to see him pull up on Curp, and if he felt he had something left to go then. He is a man that lacks speed. It's very difficult for him to win any kind of an Olympic title because he lacks sprinting speed. And Carlos Lopez, who won the marathon, just blew him off in the last couple of miles. Treacy does not have much of a kick at all. So when he reaches Curp, it's incumbent upon him to keep on pushing. And that's why you saw him not stay with him for a long time and force the pace. He's very, very mentally tough because he knows he doesn't have much raw sprinting speed.
Getting ready to pass the Tasuki on. John Treacy, who stretched it out from a half-minute behind to over a half-minute ahead. John Doherty, 21, out of Birmingham, Ireland, will take it the final 10 kilometers.
What's left in this race, if you've ever been through Central Park or jogged here, is one full loop of the park again. There's the elapsed time, 1 hour, 56 minutes, 32 seconds. And they will come in and finish right under that banner after running 6.2 miles.
And in the second spot, Mark Curp of the United States out of Lee's Summit, Missouri, runner-up in the 87 Cascade runoff at 15K. The top-ranked road racer in the country last year, running the fourth leg and waiting to take it home for Uncle Sam, Ed Eyestone, 26, out of Orem, Utah. The Tasuki comes off. Eddie is waiting, a lot of ground to make up. Remember, John Gregorek said 5-10 seconds was the biggest deficit that we could hope for if Eyestone was to pull it out. Eddie's got some different thoughts. And the exchange of the Tasuki, Eyestone on the final 10 kilometers once around New York's famed Central Park.
Oh, he could fall down and get up, and Doherty, I think, is in good shape. You're looking at about a 45 to 50 second deficit right now, Jim. It was 1:56.32 or so when he went back there. Look at them tuck it in. Maybe they've all passed that message along that John Gregorek was talking about, to make that Tasuki just kind of rest comfortably in your body.
10 kilometers around New York Central Park will complete 50 kilometers or 30 miles, 31 miles to be exact. It all began at 7 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time. It was 46 degrees if you're joining us late. Temperature up now approaching the mid-50s under cloudy skies. There are 9 teams from Japan, Canada, England, France, Ireland, Italy, Korea, the Soviet Union, and Uncle Sam here as well. But right now, it is the Irish out in front. The Soviets wearing the red sashes, finishing up on that fourth leg for Russia. Mikhail Khramov, who's 24 years of age.
He's going to pass off to Valeriy Abramov, who is the most seasoned Muscovite and Russian on this team. He has been a internationalist for 9 years. Look who's in front of the Russian here. Here's Steve Jones coming in. Jones has moved his team, Great Britain, up into third place now.
And the Wales native, 32 years of age, passes it off to Eamon Martin, 29, out of London. So the Brits are in the third spot, and the Soviets, Valeriy Abramov, have dropped down into fourth. Abramov off on his final 10 kilometers. Well, you said Ireland, Great Britain. Certainly Ireland out in front. There's Valeriy Abramov. And there is New York Central Park. Over on the right-hand side, the boathouse, the lake, the skating rink, the children's zoo. It has hilly roads, a dirt track around the reservoir, Central Park, the runner's capital of Manhattan. The New York Roadrunners Club is located right across the street from the east entrance to the park at 89th and 5th Avenue.
That big reservoir you see at the top of your screen is 1.6 miles around, and there's a cinder path right around the edge of it. And it is absolutely, it's amazing they haven't wore a hole down into China.
Again, the park, 840 acres in the middle of Manhattan, designed in the mid-1800s by Frederick Law Olmsted and Calvert Vokes. And there on the State Exchange,
Terry Cotton handing off to Mark Conover. It's California in the lead. Arizona was second as of a mile ago. And they are right now, Jim, less than 2.5 minutes behind the leading international team, which is Ireland.
So it's Mark Conover out of California leading the state division. California on top. Right now, Ireland leading the international division. We've got 9 kilometers left to the finish. We'll be right back. Union now has wrestled the 3rd spot from the Brits. Eamon Martin, 29 out of London, out there for Great Britain, has dropped back to 4th. And for the Soviet Union, it is Valeriy Abramov running on that final leg for the U.S. Right now, Mayor Ed Koch is holding the finish line tape. Not too long to go to the finish. Pat Porter, I want to thank you for joining us here. Congratulations on your first Eikeden and continued good luck in all your training.
Thank you very much. A quick tip of the hat to the New York Roadrunners, Fred Lebo, Alan Steinfeld, for an excellent job organizing this, and to Phil Stewart for organizing all the state teams. How'd you like to get that job?
Well, the last time we had the state standings, it was California with Mark Conover, 27 years of age, running that anchor leg, 10 kilometers. He had taken the Tasuki from Terry Cotton, the other members of the Canadian team, Rob Anex and Mark Junkermann, Vince Draddy. Less than 2 minutes from the finish right now for the international competition, which belongs to Ireland. Arizona was running 3rd in the state competition, and Massachusetts 2nd. All 50 states represented, along with a team from the District of Columbia and New York City.
This is the last hill, Jim, that they're coming up, and it's kind of a tough hill. It's the same finish route that you have for the last, about quarter mile here that they use for the New York Marathon, and he's heading right up the road to the finish line. Miles is the distance, 50 kilometers, in about 2 hours and 25 minutes.
There it is. The Irish, led by John Treacy in fabulous 4th leg, 15 kilometers. John Doherty crosses the finish line, but the Irish team going 5Ks. Marcus O'Sullivan, Frank O'Mara ran the 2nd leg of 8 kilometers. Roy Dooney, the 3rd leg, went 12. John Treacy went 15 and came from 30 seconds behind and gave that man, John Doherty, a 30-second lead. And here comes Uncle Sam for the USA, Ed Eyestone, 26 out of Orem, Utah.
There's Eyestone, and he's probably closed down some of the margin that he had to make up. He ran a very strong leg. Yes, he has. He's about 50 seconds behind. That's about the same distance he was behind. Eddie Eyestone closes for the United States in 2nd place. The Japanese and the Koreans did not send their seasoned veterans so much, but America had just about its best team that they could have assembled here, and they take 2nd. Ireland definitely set its best. The Soviet Union was in 3rd place the last we heard. Great Britain had a very strong contingent out here. And at the exchange, they were virtually tied with the Soviet Union for 3rd. But Abramov, the 31-year-old Muscovite, surged ahead of Eamon Martin of Great Britain to take and move into the 3rd spot midway through the 10K race. There is Doherty, does a lot of training up in Rhode Island in the same area that John Treacy does. It's kind of a hotbed for Irish runners. There is 3rd place. This is Eamon Martin now. Evidently, the Great Britain team here in the presence of Martin has overtaken the Soviet Union to pull into 3rd. Believe me, that hill he's climbing looks like a mountain right now in the last stages of a 10,000-meter race. There's Abramov in the background. 29-year-old Eamon Martin, a seasoned internationalist at World Championships and in cross-country, bringing the British team in a very respectable 3rd place here. Here he comes up. He has no more than 30 yards to go now. Great Britain finishing 3rd. Deon McNeilly led off. Roger Hackney, a steeplechaser, ran the 5-mile leg. Steve Binns ran the 12K leg. Steve Jones, the 2nd fastest marathoner ever, ran 9.3 miles. And the finish up is Eamon Martin. 305 athletes from states and 8 foreign countries, along with America's best, were represented here. This is, no doubt, to my way of thinking, the deepest team we've ever seen. Here comes the first state team beating 5 other nations of the world. This is California with a very strong team. This is Mark Conover anchoring. Vince Draddy, Mark Junkermann, Rob Anex, Terry Cotton, and Mark Conover represented California. So they beat everybody except the USA, Ireland, and Great Britain. Our hats off to the California team. As Conover, who went to Humboldt State, District 3 team, and was a top cross-country All-American, leads California to the finish line. Well, they're heading on to the finish line. It's now state teams finishing. Our congratulations to California. We'll be back right after this.
It wasn't so long. We've got some time left. We've been joined by our expert analyst, Larry Rawson, is alongside. The first Eikeden ever here in the United States, 50 kilometers around the island of Manhattan. What did we learn?
Well, I think if I could maybe shape this thing, I would maybe make it a little shorter than 31 miles. I would consider having races such as this with businesses, with university competitions. Manufacturers, Hanover has a very successful corporate challenge series for 3.1 miles all over the country. You could take that type of distance and shape it. I might have even more athletes involved in the competition than just 5 legs, because the lead would change more often. And I think you could build excitement that way, Jim. I think there's a lot of potential for this type of race. Japan, as I mentioned very early in our show, if you weren't with us, has a rating for one of its Eikidens that they show on television. 35% of all the television sets in Japan watch that event. That's how popular it has become over the years.
What do we learn as far as the United States team is concerned?
I think we learned that right now the Irish heritage and distance running certainly has survived. We had a very strong team. I think they ran about as well as they could. They were rested coming into it. They were pumped up. I spoke with all of them the day before, and yet the Irish still won. And John Treacy, I know Dooney ran a better leg than they expected. He was the one weak link, but Treacy was awesome.
Well, we got up very early in the morning. It all began at 7 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time. That was 8 p.m. in Tokyo, the birthplace of the Eikeden. It was 46 degrees, not much warmer right now. The Irish win. The United States takes the second spot. The Soviet Union grabs third. Eikeden. It translates to messenger. It began with the Japanese postal system back in the 1600s. Today, the Irish delivered the mail. Today's first running of the 1988 ASICS Cup, America's Eikeden, has been brought to you by ASICS. And by Seiko, world leader in timing. For Larry Rawson, I'm Jim Kelly. So long, everybody.